Hello and welcome to My Baking Journey, a podcast for bakers where you get to hear from some of the great minds in the baking industry. My name is Haf.
And my name is Rachel. I'm a baker. I know what it's like to be baking all day alone in my kitchen, experiencing the frustrations and struggles with no one else to guide or support me through it.
And I'm not a baker, but I've witnessed all the ups and downs that come with this industry and where it's hard to get a little bit of extra help.
So if you're looking for advice, tips, and amazing insight from various experienced bakers, you've come to the right place.
So let's give you a little insight into what's in store for you this week.
That is one of my most asked questions. Do your customer ask you for the design or did you come up with the design? That is, I think, one of my most asked questions. And I think I dream about cakes. I see things and I think about cakes, or I see some interior decor and I see a combination I like and I want to apply it to a cake. So that is definitely me. I have learned and understood that I cannot cater to everyone. If somebody tells me I have an event and it's outdoors, I simply tell them that I cannot make a buttercream cake here outdoors. I would not. It is very challenging and I don't give myself time, I feel, to stop and think what I want to do next and have a plan and give myself time to execute that plan. I really have this addiction to create something different, create something unique. And my brain is like always working. What can I do? I can mix two styles and always trying to come up with new color combinations or anything that I can try a new technique. But designing is something that I think it's my passion.
Hey, so you all know by now, we started this podcast to help build something of a support network for bakers. A place where you can listen, learn, relate, be inspired, and most importantly, not feel alone in your own baking journey. So imagine if you really are baking on your own in a country where the style of baking you do is non-existent, when ingredients, accessories, and access to training all comes from overseas. I mean, imagine your favorite sprinkles or palm spears coming from thousands of miles away. Well, say hello to the world of where Anjali lives in. She's known by Cakes & Co. online, and she lives in Panama. Think Central America. Definitely not the middle of nowhere, but in the baking world, some days it can certainly feel that way. Through all of this, though, Anjali has built a brand, style, and a significant following on social media by her inspiring cakes, her patterns, her use of colors, and her designs. She's created something out of nothing, and we're really interested to speak with her. Just to note, English is her third language, so she spoke so well about her challenges, even though it's not in her mother tongue. But anyway, let's not keep you waiting any longer, and let's hear Anjali's baking journey. Enjoy.
Anjali. That's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
This is not a Hispanic or Latin American name.
No, it's an Indian name.
It's an Indian name, right? So what is an Indian doing in Panama? Maybe I should ask first.
Yeah, well, that started with my dad that I think in 1972 or 71, he thinks in India we're not doing well because we are Hindus, but of a caste that's called Sindhis. So the Sindhis stayed in a region that's actually now Pakistan.
Okay.
India had a partition, I think it was 75 years ago, that all the Hindus that stayed in the area that now is Pakistan had to, basically they were refugees and they left everything and went to settle in any other city in India. So, well, our family struggled and my grandparents, I think they sent my uncle abroad and then my dad had to go because things were not as they wanted in India. So in 1970, I think my dad came because his uncle had a company here.
Oh, right.
So he came to work for him and send money home, basically.
Yeah. Sure.
He was married back then. Then he went back to India in 75 and he got married. And then we were born here.
Oh, so came back to Panama.
He got married and came back to work. Well, then actually, when I was 8 years old, then I moved to Chile. So I was born in Panama, but brought up in Chile, which is in South America.
Yeah.
Then when I got married, I came back to Panama.
How many years did you spend in Chile?
I think about 17, 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a long
Sure.
story.
No, it's interesting because we're looking at your name thinking, okay, first we have to pronounce it right.
Yeah, of course.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, at that point you realize, like, hang on, if you are of Indian background, I don't know how large the community is in Panama, but more interestingly for you, here we were thinking your upbringing was maybe in Panama as a child, but it sounds like it's probably more so Chile, right?
Yes, my teenage years and my university all were in Chile. So it's
A very
complicated
different
because,
climate.
yeah, I feel I'm a Hindu. My parents are very orthodox, will you say? Very attached to the culture, and we are still very attached to the culture. So we still speak the language. We eat Indian food in the house.
Yeah.
But I also speak Spanish. Spanish is my first language. So I don't know. I am a bit Chilean, a bit Hindu, a bit.
Yeah, we should go back to when you're younger. You probably remember more of spending time in Chile. So if we try to bring in the baking piece into this, you must have had some kind of influence or hobby, or where did you start doing this? Was this when you were a child, around family, or did this come later in life?
Well, when this started and like lately I've been thinking about it because it's become what I do. Now it's become what I do. It started as a hobby. Cooking and baking has always been a part of my life, I think. My dad wanted me to learn cooking, so he sent me to the kitchen when I was 10 years old with my mom, like to learn basic cooking. And I didn't like it much, but he had a very smart way to make me engage with it. Like he complimented a lot. And then I love desserts. So when I was a bit comfortable in the kitchen because of the cooking, I think I started looking for my own recipes and making my own very simple desserts. When my friends used to come over, I would always make something sweet for them. But I went to law school, by the way, in Chile. So whenever I had my big exams or like stressful periods, I would come home and tell my mom, leave the kitchen empty for me because I want to make something. And that was always a dessert. And there was not much of decorating back then, but really I wanted to experiment with flavors and different things back then. So it was relaxing. It was definitely a hobby.
Did you have like something that you went back to and thought, all right, I feel really stressed, so I'm going to make a really nice chocolate cake?
Well, law school, I'm sure it's quite stressful.
Some cookies, or was it something different?
Actually, I used to make a lot apple crumble pie.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that one.
Yeah.
It was a favorite. My family loved it, and my mom friends would like it. So whenever she had a gathering, she would say, "Can you make your pie, please?" And that was requested a lot.
You go through law school, then you finish. I'm assuming you finished law school.
Yes.
Did you go into law practice?
For a very, very short period of time.
Okay. So you go through law school, you're into this, it changes. And is that the transition that you end up making? You're still obviously baking through all this process. It sounds like you've been doing it for so long, you're never going to stop doing it. But is there a point where something happens to make you shift and switch and think, okay, hang on, maybe I'm being drawn to that more?
That happened when I got married and moved back to Panama.
Okay.
That is because I didn't pursue law also, even though I'm born here, so I can practice law in this country. It was complicated. I was newly married. I was living with my in-laws back then, and in a small city, not in Panama City as I am now. So I kind of had time to spare. Or if you would say. And my family is very religious and they had many religious festivities, and they would ask for me to, or I would offer, I remember, like, if a cake was needed, I would offer to make it myself. And it was not called for, but I would try to make it super fancy or a tiered cake when I had no idea what I was doing. But I just had the opportunity, so I just offered myself, and I was very happy about it. And they had bake sales, so I would start making my cheesecake, which became very famous. And slowly, whenever there were a lot of social gatherings, I would bake something and take it there. I think that's when the shift happened, and a few close friends of mine started asking me if they could order like a chocolate cake or a cheesecake. And some people in our community eat eggless desserts only. So I would make, and that was something they would not get any other place. So they started asking if I could make for them. So it was odd.
Was that a really difficult transition? I'm imagining that going into law, you would have been encouraged to go down that route, but you must have also been very bright and very driven. And then to obviously uproot and move is hard, even if it is going back to a country that you know, because you spent 17 years living somewhere else. And then having lots of free time. Was it quite a transition for you? And so what I'm getting to is that was baking some kind of outlet for you, some kind of therapy, some kind of thing that you had control over?
Maybe it was always something like that, and I never really saw it back then. I would never imagine, even back then, that I would be doing this as a living. So I don't know. It was a very slow. I don't think it was like a transition as such. It was very slow. I really took my time because many family, I would say mostly, would tell me like, when you start, it's not like that. No, I don't think many people will buy. So it was always like people putting me down, I would say, but it was their opinion. Maybe not, they would think that it would not do so well, or maybe just because you're taking it to a party, it's different. But when you start selling, it's going to be different. And like economically, I never had the need to like do something of my own or start my own business of baking that also. So it took me a while.
So can I just jump in and ask what the baking supply situation is like in Panama? So was it easy to get access to a lot of the different ingredients that you wanted?
Ingredients was not that big of a problem, honestly. There are some things that you would still not get here, like buttermilk, for instance, or cake flour, for instance, but I would manage and make my own. Ingredients was not such a big issue, but when it comes to cake decorating or the latest trends, yeah, you don't find it here in Panama.
I'm asking because I started seriously getting into baking when I was in Singapore. And I remember some of the frustrations of living there was I didn't have access to the latest sprinkles.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to ship them over from
Yeah.
America and pay some extraordinary amount in shipping
Yeah.
to get access to them. Or there was certain, lots of different toppers or dried flat, all these things that I saw. It was very frustrating because I knew I could do it. I just couldn't find it. And I was just trying to imagine what Panama is like, because for you, even 6, 8 years ago when you started.
But it keeps happening because trends keep changing. Like, for instance, you talk about sprinkles. Yes, we don't get any of those big brands here. So if I want anything special, I do need to order it. Or if I see these butterflies that were in a while ago, you will not get it here. You will get it here when it's already late.
Yeah.
The trend is past.
Yes, when the trend has passed, so you always have to be searching in the market, or in the US for me that is easier, which is closer to me. So yeah,
I think the irony is that all these goods are passing through Panama all the time, through the canal, on a boat, in a cargo ship. You just can't get access to it, right?
true, it's true. And many companies message me that they want me to promote their items. And then when I tell them I would love to, I am in Panama. Like, are you aware of that? And many have decided not to because it is far, or maybe not the market they would like to target. I don't know. But yes, it is complicated.
If I go back and you've recently moved to Panama and you're making lots of cakes for family and friends, how did you train yourself up? Like, I'm guessing this was just trial and error and YouTube and Pinterest, Instagram. I don't know. Is the cake decorating courses being offered in Panama?
When I got married, I remember clearly I had a talk with my husband when I actually told him that I have this hidden interest, because it didn't come up until then. And he was like really, really excited about it. And he told me, you should pursue it, you should go for it, and let's find out about some decorating classes or baking classes. So I did look up in some of the baking supply stores. I asked around because I was also new here, and they recommended some people, but I went to a course. It was very, very old school. It was basically about scroll piping and things like that, which was not even in back then.
So that's royal icing, yeah?
Yeah.
Scroll pipe, yeah.
And the courses I took here really were not what I was looking for. And Instagram was not what it's nowadays. There were no videos and there were no content creators, and people would not share nearly as much as they do now. It was very, very different. And I remember I found all these Australian pages about cake making, and I was like completely, completely amazed. Even I saw these letters, which I know it's now done with tappet cutters, but back then I had no idea how they can pipe so perfectly, because how to make something if you don't know even how it's called.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. So I think it was only YouTube for me back then, and Google, because there were no videos.
Was anyone in your area baking, selling cakes? That did you have any competition?
No, basically here there are many bakers, many, many talented bakers, but most of them, and especially back then, it was only fondant. Fondant cakes and drip cakes were like so in back then when I started, and buttercream cakes. But that I recall of, there were a few, but I didn't know about them. But there were mostly people doing only fondant cakes. So I started with buttercream cakes from the beginning, which was something also different.
Challenging too, right?
And challenging, because this, as I tell you, I was literally blindfolded. I had no idea where I was getting into. And I thought I'll do buttercream cakes, but then I saw like all the challenges of that because of our weather, but I didn't want to quit.
Let's talk about that, because Panama is a tropical climate. So it ranges between about 27 to 30, probably 32, 33 every day, all year round. And it has a rainy season in between, right? So the challenges of that, and I can also relate because I was doing the same in Singapore, the same climate, is butter melts.
Yes.
Chocolate melts. And those are perfect temperatures for it melting. What have you learned during the way along your journey about decorating cakes with buttercream? Because your cakes are predominantly buttercream, right?
Like 98%.
By the way, you realize we're talking to you. I'm wearing a scarf. Rachel's got a blanket on her lap. It's -2 outside here. If your fridge was full, you just store stuff outside because it's just going to be fine. And so it's just amazing to think like you pick a style of cake making in a climate which is completely the worst choice whatsoever.
Yes.
But I look at your feed of what you produce, and obviously now you've been doing it for a while, you practice and all this stuff, but still, you are pushing the design element out there quite crazy. Like you don't stick to a theme. I look at your Instagram feed and I don't say to myself, okay, she does this. I don't see that. Okay, maybe buttercream is the only commonality across all your cakes, but like the designs are just the shapes, the colors, the patterns, everything is crazy. And you're doing all this in hot weather, which just blows my mind.
Crazy.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going to repeat Rachel's question. Like, what have you learned? Like, how do you go about this in your kitchen?
When I started, it was basically very not so tall cakes, maybe 2 layers or 3 layers. And I had this thinking, or I believed that the fresher my cake is, the better. So sometimes, even if my order was for the evening, I would bake in the morning,
Ooh.
which I learned with mistake. I learned with my mistakes because then I would see the pictures of my customers and the cake has had moved or it was slanted. And yeah, of course, I would many times think, what did I do wrong? How can I improve? And then it was literally a lot of errors, because I don't think there is a tutorial in YouTube for that, or even back then that tells you specifically for your situation, what can you do? I remember when I wanted to make taller cakes and even a double barrel that I made, I had no idea what I was doing. And then I see the pictures and it was a disaster. So what I've learned is that I have to bake in advance. I have to chill my cake at least overnight before I cover it. When I cover it also, it has to be completely cold when I start decorating. And mainly I have learned and understood that I cannot cater to everyone. If somebody tells me I have an event and it's outdoors, I simply tell them that I cannot make a buttercream cake here outdoors. Before I was scared because people wouldn't understand, as buttercream was a new thing here
Oh, yeah.
and were used to fondant cakes, and I would tell them, and still people have a hard time understanding when I tell them you have to refrigerate your cake because it's such a tall, fancy decorated cake, and they're not used to. They are used to taking it and just storing it in an air conditioned room, which is enough for a fondant cake, but not enough for a buttercream cake, especially if you're going to transport it after. So I have learned not to be ashamed of that, because it made me feel like my product was inferior in a way compared to fondant cakes, what other bakers were doing here. And I think slowly, slowly, I gained the confidence because people started liking buttercream and only preferring buttercream than fondant. So I started explaining to my customers how you are supposed to handle a buttercream cake, how it needs to be displayed in the table, for how long. And basically, I have to follow these rules that I have to give you the cake completely chilled. When you transport it, you place it in the fridge, and then you have to display it for a certain amount of time in an air conditioned room. So I have learned all of that,
Yeah, sure.
and to basically explain to the customers because they also don't know. And now many of my, how you say, regular customers, they already know how to take care, and they always prefer a buttercream cake than fondant.
It is a preference, right? I think once they try, and also the designs that you're coming up with, it's just all part of it. Like people will, I'm sure somebody else will be at that party and say, I want that cake next time, or I want something like that next time. And then, of course, word of mouth spreads and you build your following, right? So now I'm imagining for Panama, you must be one of the most well known modern cake bakers around in Panama, because you've been doing this for a while. You've built quite a social media following as well. Your designs are quite unique. And in a country which isn't necessarily known for generating a lot of modern style buttercream cakes, you must be one of a handful of people doing it, if many. So I think where I'm going with this is, like, I can see that you're breaking more ground, but have you even thought about any of this in terms of you, your business, your brand? Or have you just had to keep learning as you go along, just like you did transitioning to baking in heat, managing your business, managing your brand, or even not even realizing you had a brand until a certain day you wake up and you go, oh, hang on a second, I have a brand here. How have you been dealing with that, just as far as the business getting bigger and bigger and busier for you?
I think I am in that last stage that you just mentioned, that very surreal to me. I don't really believe or realize that I have a brand. It's only last year that I started thinking about it. And because I've been doing it for a while, but the page has this more massive following, I think, during pandemic, that I don't know what happened. And things have changed for me since that also, because before, as I said, I didn't have any economical pressure. So I am always like game for trying new things, new ideas, because I still bake a lot for my family and friends, new designs, even if I know it's not going to be doable for a client, maybe I can try it for my house. But before it was nobody's watching. It's okay. My page had a very little following, and then everything changed, and I felt a bit of a pressure, I would say. Like now, oh my God, I admire Carly from Wish Upon a Cake. Her work, it's like amazing, and I have been following her since I started. Or many other bakers that suddenly started following me and complimenting my work. That was completely surreal for me. So I was like, wow, now but people are watching. So you feel a difference because you're lost in a corner in Panama doing whatever you want, and then all of a sudden things have changed. And I have not given myself time, I think, to think where I want to go with this, because I definitely feel I have to diversify.
Yeah.
I would like to offer online courses and maybe do classes here also, or why not in other countries in Latin America? If I have the opportunity, why not?
I think it'd be an amazing thing to give back to Panama and South America, to actually have someone of your skill and talent and the years that you've put into it and the time that you've been put into it to actually be taught. If you think back to when you were getting your cake classes, that they were very much an old style, traditional style of cake decorating, then I think you would be hugely popular, hugely in demand. And if it was something that you felt that you wanted to go down, but I'm sure it's a very different thing as well. So there definitely has to be the passion there. But your cakes are exquisite. They really are. That's why Half and I were thinking, hey, it's so interesting. Like, do her customers ask her to come up with all these? Because you have a very different, like your feed of cakes, it varies from you got your colors, textures, designs, shapes.
Yeah, I can't imagine a customer's come to you and said, I want a hexagon cake.
Oh no.
But no, right? But you've delivered, for example, a hexagon cake.
I think that is one of my most asked questions. Do your customer ask you for the design, or did you come up with the design? And I think I dream about cakes. I see buildings and I think about cakes, or I see some interior decor and I see a combination I like and I want to apply it to a cake. So that is definitely me. It started very differently because my customers will only send me these traditional old school fondant cakes at the beginning. Then I was like, I did make many of them, even though I didn't want to. And then slowly I started suggesting some styles, some combinations, because when you don't have them in your feed, also for people, it's difficult to understand what you want to do. And then now have things have evolved, and people only send me my designs, and they want me to replicate, which also I would prefer not to. Like we always, as cake makers, designers, want to make something unique. But I have to say, more and more, my clients trust me and they tell me, I trust you, you come up with the design, I just like these colors, or I really like this idea of the hexagon, you can mix and match and things like
But
that.
has that taken time? What I mean by this is that if I was a new baker and I had maybe 20, 30 cakes on my Instagram feed, does it take time for your clients to trust you to come up with a new concept? Because it's quite hard for a baker to suggest, if someone comes to you and says, I want this cake and I want it to be like this, then for a baker to turn around who's probably early days into baking and say, oh, I'd really like to try this. I think it would look really good. Has it taken you time for your clients to trust you?
Yes, definitely.
There's another way you can ask that. It's really around like your confidence level. How long has it taken you to build your confidence? Because you're not trained professionally. You didn't come from baking schools or anything like that. these people find you, they push these fondant designs on you, you push back and say, actually, I'd like to do this. That's confidence, right? To say, I can deliver you something that's going to be incredible. But that must take time to build.
Definitely. When I started, if somebody would ask something that was completely out of my style, a fondant cake, which I don't really enjoy making theme cakes, like very more inspired by a theme, but theme cakes, which are still very popular in Panama. So I would say that I am fully booked, that I'm not available for that date, which was not right. So now I have reached a point that I clearly say, I am so sorry, but that's not my style. I can surely recommend you a baker that can deliver something like what you're looking for, or if you want something inspired by a theme, or you want me to design something inspired by a theme, I'm happy to do it. But if you're looking for that and a fondant cake, like, I'm not your girl.
Yeah.
It's taking a long time, honestly.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask. You know you're about to go bake a cake, right? Or maybe you're making one right now. A really nice and expensive tall cake with some beautiful decorations and maybe some dried flowers or a large topper. What are you going to box that in when you give that to the customer? Please don't tell me you're going to use extenders and staple that to a standard flimsy box and then wrap the thing in plastic and then give that to the customer hoping for the best. I have a better idea. Why don't you try Alba tall cake boxes? They're gorgeous, strong, they come in 14 or 20 inches tall. You can easily put them together and they're perfect for your beautiful cakes. I mean, you've just spent 4 or 5 hours making this thing. Show it off in something that's going to elevate your brand to another level and then wow the customer. Check them out at www.olba.shop. That's OLBAA. All right, back to the show.
It takes time to build that confidence, I think, to be able to push back. Because I'm also thinking back to when I started my baking business, and just like someone would ask me something and I'd just be like, oh, I don't know. Do I have to, and you feel like you're awkward and you're compromising and you're thinking, well, they're paying this for this, but it's difficult. So I think that's great advice, that learning from you, that it does take time and it does take...
It never ends, I feel. We still struggle. I still doubt myself and my skills. I still have a lot of questions. I don't think it ever stops. Definitely when you do so many things, like you say, different shapes, different techniques, you do have some confidence that after a few years, but it's never ending. There's always a new skill to learn. There's always a new shape.
That's true. Do you have anyone helping you though in the business now, or is it still just yourself?
I have people on and off. I had someone that worked for me for a couple of years. That's the longest I have had help. And then after that, which was like also 3 years ago, after that I've had on and off help. I have my children also, and it is very challenging, and I don't give myself time, I feel, to stop and think what I want to do next and have a plan and give myself time to execute that plan, which hopefully this year I will diversify a bit more.
I'm just trying to imagine. Can I ask a question? Do you have air conditioning in your kitchen?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that helps a little bit.
I'm asking because I just remember so many times. I remember being asked to do some designs in Singapore, and one of them actually had fondant attached to buttercream. I don't know if you remember this, Half. I think it was a Ninjago cake.
Oh, yeah.
And for a friend of mine. And I remember thinking, okay, I know how to do that. I'll do buttercream and then I'll cut out the design in fondant and I'll stick it to the buttercream. So my kitchen did not have air conditioning. So I was in and out the fridge. And I remember thinking, right, I've got the fondant perfect. I've got those nice sharp edges. It probably wasn't that sharp at that time. And I stuck it on. I said, oh, the cake's done. And I looked at it, and then like 5 minutes later, the whole Ninjago fondant was just sliding down and everything, all the color came off, everything. And I said to Hef, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm literally on the fly in the heat thinking about plan B. That's not going to work. I'm going to have to do something else. I'm going to have to do it all in buttercream and back in the fridge, and I've got young kids around me ready to go. I had that 1 hour window to decorate. Have you had any like baking disasters? Or maybe we should reframe that and call it baking learnings, which could have been heat related or just something that you've learned along the way.
Every single day.
It's the one that comes to mind. I have so many that.
Yes, I think every single day. But with that you're saying about the fondant placements, now I have a system when I decorate, like when I'm baking, of course, when I am stacking my cake, I don't need air conditioning. So it's only when I'm decorating, when my cake is completely chilled, like my kitchen has to be completely cold, and then I start decorating. So with the fondant decorations, I learned that if I keep them in the fridge just like that, it's gonna be not very neat when I take it out because it's gonna start sweating and
shiny.
shiny.
It goes shiny, doesn't it?
So whenever I place fondant decorations on my cake, I keep it in a box inside the fridge, and that has helped a lot.
Oh, well, that's a really interesting tip.
It has helped, and when I transport it, like it has to be boxed. I don't box it and then box it. I put it in the fridge, and then it goes for delivery. And then the transition also has to be from fridge. Keep it outside in the box in an air conditioned room for like 20 minutes and then unbox it. It really helps.
That's amazing.
That's a good one. We'd never know that. Of course, I'm not the baker here, but still, I'm privy to a lot of this information.
So I'm keen to understand that obviously baking became a therapy, an outlet for you when you were doing law. And is baking still therapeutic for you, or have you replaced, now it's become more of a full-time job for you? Have you replaced that with something else?
Yeah, now I have replaced it with design. Definitely. I dream of new designs, new things I want to make more than the baking. I still love new cake flavors, and I like to introduce a new cake flavor every year. So there's experimenting in that. But I really have this addiction to create something different, create something unique. And my brain is like always working. What can I do? I can mix two styles and always trying to come up with new color combinations or anything that I can try a new technique. But designing is something that I think it's my passion.
You must get inspiration then from everywhere because if it's always on your mind, you're always thinking about it. And like you say, you could look at a building, you could look at an interior, you could probably look at someone's dress.
Yeah.
Because I noticed you use a lot of different stencil variations. You like patterns, whether it's symmetrical and non-symmetrical. So you're obviously inspired outside of just from food. You're inspired from the environment that you're in. And I think the culture that you're in is quite conducive to inspiration as well, because I gather it to be more of a social aspect, and you have that ability to be constantly making things for groups of people and trying and testing. So you're always in this environment where you can push out ideas to your close group who can tell you a bit more like, oh, this is cool, this is not cool, or something like that. So I think you have this really nice environment to work off of, because a lot of bakers that we work with out here, they're on their own, right? And they just don't have that ability except for the customers that they have to work with. A lot of them are just baking in their kitchens by themselves, and they don't have that community around them sometimes to just push stuff out. So I think that's really cool for you. But also you're just inspired by everything that you see, and that definitely shows in the output of what you bake. So I think that's really cool. Personally, I love architecture more than the interior side. So for me, I look at some of your cakes and I think, yeah, I love the architectural component or the aspect or the complexity behind what you make. It's just brilliant to watch. I just can't wait to see what you continue to do next, because I think you have a lot of talent and you've got a lot of direction to go and take it. You just need to carve out the time to do that, right, in your daily busy life, so that balancing children, family, everything else, to focus on the business.
Yeah, someone asked me once, how do you manage, how do you balance everything, your children, your social life, your business, your health, your training? And my honest answer was, I don't. I really don't. I still am struggling, learning. I wish I would do it in a better way than I do, because sometimes my brain is like all messed up and it's like full of ideas. So I really think that that's also a big challenge that I need to improve.
Yeah, no, it's very cool though. It's really interesting to get that sort of take. We've got a few minutes left, so we're going to wrap up a few things. But one thing we love to do at the end of each one of our conversations with bakers is a little quick fire question round. So it's just a few questions. You can just throw out the first thing that comes to mind. You don't have to explain it if you don't want to. Okay. I think we already know. No, maybe we don't know the answer to this one actually.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask you: American buttercream or Swiss meringue buttercream?
Swiss meringue all the way.
Swiss meringue all the way. Okay.
Even though I started with American
All
butter.
right. Okay. Interesting.
One aspect of baking you won't compromise on.
The quality of my ingredients.
Yeah. Yeah. Always a good one. Very good. Okay. How about a baking book from your bookshelf?
I really love from Magnolia Kitchen.
Oh, I love her.
Bernadette.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite recipe of hers?
She has a very nice macaron tutorial in her book, and I always
She
go
likes
back
that
to
one.
that. Yes.
Yeah, whenever anyone else asks me about macaron recipes, I always point people back to Magnolia Kitchen.
And she has a lot of friendly recipes in that book also that have come handy for me.
I think she's got a new book.
Yes. I think the new is more about decorating things.
Kitchen design.
Ah, okay. Okay. Got it.
Which actually you probably really like.
Yeah, exactly. Beats right.
Who would you want to make your next birthday cake?
Birthdays in my family, it's my opportunity to try new things. So I always make my birthday cake. So I would say me to try something different.
But if it's a baker anywhere in the world,
Yeah,
who
like
would
maybe
it be?
somebody you follow or something like that may be listening.
I would love Lala to make my cake from Cakes by Lala.
Cakes by Lala.
Don't know that one. We're going to have to look her up. Fantastic.
Where is Cakes by Lala based?
She's in the US.
Okay.
I really don't know which area in the US.
No, that's all right.
No.
We'll go check her out.
Yeah.
For sure. Listen, that's brilliant. Thank you, Anjali. That was really, really nice. Really great insight, to be honest, into a little bit about you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Of course. No. We look forward to seeing what next is for you in terms of your design and business and brand. So I just really appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time. I know it's like a huge time difference for us.
Yeah, but that's okay. It's part of the fun, right? If we didn't do this, we'd never talk to people all over the world, right? So this is the best bit. Anyway, take care of yourself.
Thank you. And
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, Rach. So we just had this call with Anjali, and I'm quite taken back by it because I find the fact that she's out in Panama doing these amazing modern buttercream cakes, on her own. It's not like she has a community of bakers out there to work with. She's just basically built this up through her own inspiration and maybe a bit of YouTube and following some people over time. But she's come out of nowhere, don't you think?
yeah, and I'm thinking when she got started, it was around 2015, and like she talked about, we didn't have the same tutorial videos out there to learn, and learning. She would have really had to persevere and do lots of trial and errors, and that drive to want to do these types of cakes is really that was the exciting bit about talking to her about, like, where does that come from and what drives her to want to do another cake or dream up a hexagon cake or dream up a macaron cube on top of a cake. Or
I love that cake.
It's fantastic, right? And her strong use of colors and designs and textures. I mean, she literally channels all her creativity into these cakes, and she's doing it in Panama.
Yeah, of all places. I know, it's incredible, really. I think that it just goes to show that it doesn't matter where you are, what your background is, what environment you're in, if you really want something, you'll go and find a way to make it happen. And you'll get better and better at it. You'll make more mistakes and you'll learn from them and you'll keep growing and growing. So I say it's an amazing thing that she's got to the point that she has. I can only see her brand continue to grow and blossom in that part of the world.
Yeah, and she's incredibly humble with it as well. So her cakes are absolutely stunning, and she has a massive following. She has like 171,000 followers at the time of this recording. So
it's huge.
I can't wait to see what she does next. If she wants to do anything next.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see what happens. That's Anjali for you guys. Hope you liked it. And that wraps up episode 14 of my baking journey. Do check out the show notes to learn more about Anjali and her baking journey. And of course, we will be back next week. So, did you like the episode? Do you like the series? If you listen to us on any of those podcast apps, don't forget to hit subscribe or the follow button so that you get the latest episode from us as soon as it comes out. We will see you next week, guys. But don't forget, this podcast is brought to you by Alba, packaging for bakers designed by a baker. Make a statement with Alba packaging. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.